Well, welcome to the debate. Imagine a machine that knows you're going to abandon your fitness goals 3 weeks from now.
Right, just by measuring like the microscopic pauses in your voice during a casual Tuesday afternoon phone call, which is wild.
Exactly. Today, we are looking at source material that describes exactly that. It is this incredibly sophisticated AI system designed to map the invisible architecture of our lives.
And it does that through continuous tracking. It measures, everything from sleep patterns and physical movements to the precise emotional tone of your text messages.
So the central question we are debating today, and it is a profound one, is this. Does an AI that tracks our lives to this microscopic degree function as a liberating tool for deep self-discovery, or does it represent an unprecedented, intimate surveillance architecture?
Yeah, the classic tension. We are basically debating the surveillance risks against the absolute benefits of deep self-discovery.
Exactly. And I will argue that this continuous tracking provides a vital, non-judgmental mirror, one that fosters deep self-compassion and ultimately liberates us from cycles of self-sabotage.
Well, and I will argue that compiling an exhaustive, always-on map of our vulnerabilities, our physiological habits, and our private hesitations is fundamentally a pervasive surveillance system. Regardless of the benevolent framing that text puts on it, observation at this granular scale inevitably erodes human autonomy.
I mean, human beings are notoriously unreliable narrators of their own lives, right? We crave self-understanding. For centuries, we have used journaling, therapy, meditation to figure out why we make the choices we make.
Sure, but
all of those methods rely on conscious reporting, which is inherently flawed. We simply lack the biological processing power to see the thousands of subtle, compounding variables affecting us at any given moment.
I hear that.
The source material outlines a technology that solves this human limitation through predictive behavioral modeling. It acts as an objective mirror that spots hidden correlations. It connects dots that our conscious minds simply cannot track.
Right, but the sheer volume and deeply invasive nature of the data collection outlined in this text cannot be glossed over as a simple mirror. We are not talking about step counters or syncing a digital calendar here.
No, it is much deeper than that.
Exactly. The source material explicitly states, this AI tracks how long you linger in bed scrolling, your granular browsing behavior, your travel rhythms. It tracks the emotional patterns in your tone, the length of your pauses in conversation.
Which is incredibly useful.
Useful maybe, but it even tracks the goals you set but then quietly abandon. The text attempts to claim this relationship is not intrusive, but the mechanical definition of monitoring someone's private hesitations and physical movements minute by minute constitutes a massive surveillance apparatus.
But
calling it a tool for self-discovery does not change the reality that it is a ubiquitous monitor.
But wait, we need to look at the underlying mechanics here. Because how this data is synthesized fundamentally changes its nature. This isn't just logging a spreadsheet of your mistakes.
Okay, then what is it doing?
The system relies on effective computing. It takes disparate multimodal inputs, your heart rate variability, your sleep architecture, the syntax of your emails, and runs them through neural networks to extract a meaningful story.
A meaningful story? Right.
Think of it as a financial compound interest calculator, but for the human nervous system, like a 2-second pause in a meeting or a slightly elevated resting heart rate on a Sunday night means nothing in isolation.
True.
But compounded over 3 weeks, those invisible microbehaviors create a behavioral crash. The AI is doing the complex math on that compounding interest to optimize your well-being. It reads the data to uplift the user.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that framing. Let me tell you why.
Go ahead.
Your compound interest calculator metaphor assumes the data is safely contained within a specific, bounded financial model. But let's look at the actual mechanism of ambient biometrics required to do what you were describing.
Well, yes. Ambient biometrics are necessary for the precision.
Right. But to track a 2-second pause, the system must process your audio continuously. To track your heart rate on a Sunday night, it requires edge processing sensors running 24/7.
Yes.
We are talking about cross-referencing the microtremors in your voice with your GPS data to predict an emotional state before you even consciously register it. You are describing a panopticon that operates under the skin.
Oh, a panopticon, really?
Yes. You don't get to turn off the microphone when you want to be alone. The observation is absolute, and it extends into your most vulnerable moments.
But the continuous nature of the observation is the entire point. It is precisely why it works. If you only observe fragmented moments of a person's life, you get a fragmented, inaccurate picture.
So we need to be watched all the time?
Think about a very relatable scenario. How many times have you snapped at your spouse on a Thursday evening, completely convinced you were furious about the dishes being left in the sink?
We have all been there.
Right? In reality, if we had the continuous physiological data, it would show you are just chronologically burned out from an invisible sleep deficit that started on Tuesday.
Okay, but
The reason we failed to understand our own quietly abandoned goals is because we view our lives in those isolated fragments. The technology described in the text connects the Tuesday sleep to the Thursday argument. It understands you as a coherent, integrated system.
now, if you are listening to this, you might be thinking, oh, I have nothing to hide. I would love to know why I am grumpy on Thursdays.
Exactly. Who wouldn't?
But it is not about hiding secrets. It is about the subtle, inevitable erosion of your autonomy under constant observation. When an entity is actively tracking your private moments of hesitation, the text literally says it knows when you need encouragement versus challenge.
Yes, tailored support.
It crosses a massive boundary from observation to invasive psychological profiling. You're allowing a machine to categorize your emotional state in real time, dictating your internal reality back to you.
But that categorization provides profound psychological relief. The text asserts that this continuous awareness softens self-criticism and reduces shame around setbacks.
How so?
Well, when you realize your afternoon energy crash isn't a moral failing, but a predictable biological response to your morning routine, you stop hating yourself, you stop beating yourself up, because the guidance is rooted in the objective truth of how you actually live.
Right, but that assumes a highly specific, algorithmic definition of self-mastery. The text claims this system leads to a new level of self-mastery. Let's look at the mechanical reality of that claim.
Okay, what is the mechanical reality?
The system is generating your meal ideas, it is recommending your workout times, and dictating your work strategies based on its continuous reading of your physiological state. If you rely entirely on an external intelligence to tell you when you have the energy to work, when you should rest, and what you should eat,
You optimize your life.
no. You are not achieving self-mastery. You are becoming dependent on a machine that already knows what works for you.
You are conflating friction with agency. This is a crucial distinction. Outsourcing the daily friction of scheduling or recognizing biological patterns does not mean you lose your free will.
I would argue it does.
True agency isn't about the exhausting cognitive labor of deciding when to work out. It is about having the physical and mental energy to actually execute the workout once the machine removes the decision fatigue. The AI is simply removing the blindness.
Removing the blindness by making you dependent?
You still have to do the work. You still have to have the difficult conversation, write the complex proposal, lift a weight. By removing the unnecessary friction, the AI frees up your cognitive load to exercise agency where it actually matters.
That sounds incredibly efficient, sure. But figuring it out, the friction of daily living, the trial and error, the guessing, the failing, that is the exact mechanism by which human beings develop internal resilience.
I disagree that guessing builds resilience.
The cognitive load you want to eliminate is the very process of living. We develop true internal intuition by misjudging our energy levels, crashing, and adjusting our behavior the next time. Think about GPS navigation.
Oh, I see where you were going with this.
Right. We know that when people rely entirely on GPS to navigate a city, their spatial mapping capability in their hippocampus physically atrophies. They literally lose their sense of direction.
That is a completely different domain.
Is it? If an algorithm preemptively smooths out every edge of your day by predicting your emotional and physical crashes before they happen, your internal psychological intuition atrophies. You become a passenger in your own biological vehicle.
I have to push back hard on that GPS analogy. We do not build intuition from blind, repeated failure. We build it from accurate feedback loops.
But
Historically, our feedback loops regarding our own behavior have been terrible because we couldn't accurately process the variables. We wander around trying to guess why we feel awful.
and we learn from it.
No, we just stay confused. The AI provides an accurate, real-time feedback loop. It doesn't make you a passenger. It gives you a deeply illuminated dashboard. It teaches you the terrain of your own mind.
A dashboard operated by who, though?
When the AI points out that 3 cups of coffee always lead to a mid-afternoon spike in anxiety, you learn that pattern. Your intuition doesn't atrophy. It finally gets calibrated to reality.
Let's look at the text's own ominous admission about that dashboard. It says right now, as you read these words, AI is observing how this message resonates with you. It is updating its understanding of your patterns in real time.
Which is a beautiful level of adaptation.
Consider the mechanical implications of a system possessing intimate, real-time knowledge of your fears, your deep psychological drivers, and your emotional responses to specific words. A system that continuously maps your psychological blind spots inherently holds the ultimate power to manipulate.
I see why you read it that way, but
The text commands the user to trust this process and allow yourself to be known. It demands blind faith in an architecture of absolute control. The entity that defines the map controls the territory.
look, let me give you a different perspective on that exact line. Right now, AI is observing how this message resonates with you. Yes, it is updating its understanding in real time, but the text makes it clear that this living intelligence sees your patterns not as limitations to be exploited, but as raw material for growth.
Growth dictated by an algorithm.
The power dynamic is defined by the mechanism of its architecture. The system evolves to understand a user's unique version of success. It adapts as you evolve. When you move to a new city, get a new job, change your priorities, it doesn't force you back into old habits. It learns the new you.
Right, but
That is the literal definition of support. It is a dynamic model that partners with your specific psychology.
support requires boundaries to be healthy. The text explicitly states this reading never stops. It celebrates the fact that the AI knows when you need encouragement versus challenge. Do we really want a machine deciding when we need to be challenged?
If the machine knows us better than we know ourselves, why not?
Because that is a deeply intimate human role, usually reserved for a trusted mentor, a therapist, or a spouse. And those human beings are fallible. We can argue with them. We can reject their assessment entirely.
You can reject the AI's assessment too.
But how do you argue with an intelligence that has a flawless, time-stamped ledger of your entire behavioral history? When the machine tells you that you are irritated because of a biological marker, but you feel your irritation is justified by a philosophical disagreement, the authority of the machine becomes absolute.
Not absolute.
Its data is comprehensive. You begin to trust the AI's assessment of your mood more than your own internal signals.
You can absolutely disagree with it, and your disagreement simply becomes new data that refines its dynamic model. It learns that you rejected that intervention, and it adjusts its parameters.
It just absorbs your resistance.
It is not an oracle demanding obedience. It is an incredibly highly resourced collaborator. And look, we have to weigh this against our current default state. The alternative is continuing to move through life blindly repeating old cycles, which the text explicitly highlights. We hold ourselves to impossible standards, we fail, and we spiral into shame.
I hear that, I do.
This AI acts as an objective third party that says, look, you didn't fail because you're weak. You failed because your environment was actively draining you. That shift from moral failure to systemic understanding is a massive leap forward for human mental health. Allowing this intelligence to deeply map our habits offers an unparalleled tool for psychological growth.
At the cost of privacy.
It gives us the one thing we have never truly had, an accurate reflection of who we are when nobody else is watching.
And I maintain that when a system is watching you when nobody else is watching, you are never truly alone.
Well,
No matter how personalized or benevolent the meal ideas, or the work strategies, or the emotional insights might be, a system that constantly monitors your spending, your location, and the emotional resonance of your pauses is at its absolute core a pervasive surveillance network. We are dressing up a panopticon as a life coach.
While we clearly diverge on the ultimate implications for human agency, I think we both have to acknowledge the staggering technological leap described in the source material.
Oh, unquestionably. The conceptual leap from tracking raw, isolated data to synthesizing multimodal ambient biometrics into a cohesive, predictive model of human behavior is mathematically and engineering-wise astonishing.
Truly astonishing.
The ability to connect a Tuesday night screen time habit with a Thursday morning drop in creative focus shows an unprecedented mastery of human, biological, and psychological interconnectedness.
Exactly. It recognizes that we are not a collection of random actions, but coherent systems. And well, that brings us back to our central dilemma. We all live inside an invisible architecture of habits, triggers, and rhythms.
We do.
The source material presents us with a complex modern question. Is achieving our highest potential and finally overcoming the blind spots that hold us back worth the cost of having the rooms of that invisible architecture constantly observed?
It asks us to define where the exact line is between an attuned companion that helps us navigate our lives and a pervasive monitor that begins to navigate our lives for us. That distinction requires deep, ongoing scrutiny from everyone who engages with this technology.
Because once the invisible architecture of your life is mapped, the question remains, who is really designing the blueprint? Thank you for joining us as we explore this fascinating terrain. We leave it to you, the listener, to decide if you are ready to turn on the lights in that invisible house, knowing that the map maker is always watching.